Hi there, it's Jeff. This is a follow-up video today on the router table build that I did here and the router lifter that I added to this table. I've been using this table now for several months. It's been very handy, but I have done a few improvements to it. Improvements that have been noted, especially through some comments as well, that people are having some issues with the router lifter, and I've addressed those issues in this video. So keep watching, and I'm going to share with you some of the improvements that I've made to the router lifter and this table. Okay, let's look at one of the first things I'm going to address here is to the router lifter. Now, I had a few comments with this, with people having a similar router lifter to this, and I had a similar problem myself, and that was with the router lifter sometimes moving down or moving in position after you've adjusted it to your micro adjustments or your height of your router trimmer, or your router bit, sorry, I should say. And it has happened to me once. So the way that I have addressed this is very simple. All it is the adjustment nut that goes up and down. I've put a nut on the top which acts as a lock nut, and you lock it with a 10mm spanner because that nut is actually an M6 nut. And the other thing I've also done is at the bottom of the lifter, I've put in a little nut and bolt. Basically, I just threaded that in because originally on the bottom of that, it came with a little grub screw, which actually worked its way loose and fell off on my one. So that adjustment screw, it seats on it. So it stops it from going and for this thing dropping as well. So I've added a little nut and bolt down the bottom and locked it in. It's actually threaded into the plate as well. So you thread your bolt through, and then you lock it with that nut. It acts as a lock nut, and that stops the router lifter moving after you adjusted it. You adjust your trimmer to the height that you want, lock it up at the top, and that's it. It won't move. So that's improvement number one that I've done to the actual router lifter. After doing that, I've had no problems. Happy days. So if you have one of these lifters or very similar, I suggest that you do that little easy modification to it and you won't have it moving anymore. So apart from that, this router lifter has been great. I love it for the fact that you can get that micro adjustment. It works with your little basic trimmers, and it's very inexpensive. I mean, you can pay over $200 odd for a Jessen one or some other brands, and I'm not saying that they're not good, but they are really high quality. But I mean, this thing does the job. It does a job for me anyway, so I'm happy with it. So yeah, that is improvement number one. Improvement number two, because of putting in this router lifter, I was unable to use my dust guard, or the dust guard that comes with the original base. Before putting in this lifter, I just used to bolt this underneath, and I connect my vacuum hose to this to suck the dust from the top. But with this router lifter, there's no way of putting this base on or the dust shroud. So what I did to address this, when I am using this this router lifter, I made a cover for the front and back, which just clips on with some magnets. So here's the base here. It just clips on, and it stays there with these earth magnets that are lined up. So basically, I used a jig basically use this. It's a dowel jig that I used, and I used that jig to drill my holes on the bottom there with a 10mm bit, just deep enough so the head of the earth magnet screw would connect, and drilled the corresponding holes just marked on the side of this board where they go. And it works as a giant vacuum box. It sucks in, it doesn't want to come off, and I connect a hose on the other side, which leads me to one of my other modifications that I've done, and that is I've done a little fitting here which accommodates my 4-inch hose, but I've also got a hole here which fits my vacuum hose. So the vacuum, my normal shop vac, my Festool vac that fits through there, the hose, I use that for my 2.5 horsepower plunge router when that's under here, the Triton. It's actually got a port for the hose to fit into, which is no problem, and that works good. But for the router lifter, I close the front and back, and I connect my 4-inch hose here, and it works well, which I'll show you how that goes. On the back, I've also made my own, hopefully you can see that, I've made my own dust box for the back here. Before I just had a make-do one, just made out of just some offcuts and some connections, like plumbing connections. But I actually made my own dust box here. I 3D printed it, and that print there took me 24 hours to print, so I don't want to break it. But that works well, yeah. That just connects my shop vac to that connection there. I've just made the fittings to suit that. Well, that's what I actually wanted to show you, these dust covers on the front and back. Just really simple with some earth magnets. As you can see, they're non-intrusive. You're just going to have that. If they aren't on, you just see that on the front. But There is a couple of ways that you could keep these on. Another way is if you want to put some threaded inserts with some knobs on the outside, but you'd have to unscrew them on and off. Or if you couldn't be fussed at all, just masking tape them on. Because the idea here is with the front and back covers, it creates a vacuum box underneath here, collecting all the dust that comes through the top here through, from your router bit down the bottom here in that hole. And it does actually a good job, and it does help. So I'll be mainly using these when I use the router trimmer inside here with the lifter, which is probably the most common thing that I will be using most of the time. Is I've generally got my little router trimmer in here with the lifter. But when I do have the big 2.5 horsepower Triton in here, my vacuum hose, the Festool hose, can come through the side here and connect in the, it's got a little duct port there which can connect straight in, and then I can use my 4-inch hose in the back on the fence guide or something like that. But it does work well, and when it is on, they won't fall off because it's creating a suction box, and the force is coming in, so it really works well. And I'll show you how good the suction is on this thing with the ducted on. Bit of timber. And it needs a lot of force to actually try to pull that off when the ducting is on too, so it does work well. Okay, the last one I wanted to share with you, notable upgrade I did to this was this switch here. And what this does is it allows me to switch my router on and off from the front here instead of having to reach underneath. Only when I am using my big 2.5 horsepower Triton router, which is mounted under there. So the way this works is I have a male prong plugged at the back here, which I plug in an extension lead from my power point into here, and then that supplies power to this power point here. When it's switched on, it's live, and obviously my router is plugged into this, and I switch my router switch on from the inside, and then that allows me to control it on and off from here, which is also very handy. But I mounted all this myself, and luckily enough my brother-in-law's an electrician and he wired it up for me. So unless you're really handy with the wiring, or I don't want to tell people to go and wire this up or show people that, because I'm not a licensed electrician. So yeah, that is a really good addition to the router table as well. Well, that just about wraps up this video for today, and hopefully you've got a few new pointers with your router table and upgrades that you could possibly do to yours. Don't forget to share with your friends, and thumbs up if you did like it, and please subscribe if you're not already subscribed, so you can keep up to date with all the latest videos that I come out with. And hopefully I'll see you in one of my next ones.